So there's this anthology horror series on Hulu called Monsterland, and yes, this video is about Pearl, just stick with me, I'm doing something. I was initially drawn to the series because of Caitlin Dever, who's probably best known nowadays for her role as Abby in HBO's adaptation of The Last of Us, but she initially entered my radar with her performance in Booksmart, one of my favorite films. I saw a clip of the character she played in Monsterland, Tony, and was so intrigued by how wildly different it was from her role as Amy in Booksmart. Amy is very reactive, acting primarily as the straight man to the other much louder personalities in the film. The whole cast had such wonderful chemistry that it all worked beautifully. It was a quiet and understated performance, but clearly communicated the dorky, awkward, yet competent and level-headed nature of the character. Her role in Monsterland, however, is much more active and much more depressing. Just the difference in expressions and attire do so much to communicate how much more world-weary and bitter Tony is, not to mention the accent.
Folks around here sound like they filed the letter G from working a damn alphabet.
Woo, I'm about to make a name for myself here.
Tony and Amy feel like two people who just happen to go down entirely different paths in life. Looking at them in conjunction paints a really depressing picture of how much the quality of our lives are determined by chance, by a roll of the cosmic die. In Monsterland, at the end of the first episode, after a slightly horrifying series of events, Tony ends up abandoning her child Jack in a stranger's car and rides off into the distance, saddened and a little guilty, but ultimately happy to have a weight lifted off her shoulders. Now, in isolation, that makes Tony sound like a little bit of a monster, but with the context of the full episode, which went to lengths showing just how much Tony had been struggling as a young, destitute, single mother with a daughter suffering from mental issues, the ending is framed in a much more bittersweet light than my initial description may make it seem. The audience has seen how difficult life has been for Tony. We feel for her, we want her to succeed, and as selfish and kind of morally bankrupt as her decision at the end is, it's so understandable. She didn't even want to be a mother. Of course she's tired of the responsibility.
I never wanted to be a mother. I love the feeling of it growing inside me. I was so relieved when it died.
At the end of Pearl, the eponymous character admits offhandedly to having a miscarriage and being happy that her unborn child died. It's a small detail, but I feel like it perfectly encapsulates the selfishness at the heart of Pearl and to a lesser extent Tony's characters. The key difference between Pearl and Tony, besides their propensity for murder, is privilege. Pearl, especially for the time, has an incredibly privileged life. Yes, her father has been paralyzed, her mother is extremely cold and distant, and she has to contend with the fairly restrictive societal expectations of women in the early 20th century. But compared to what many people were going through during that time of war and disease, Pearl had a good life. But the thing about privilege is that it is invisible to you unless someone points it out. Privilege is freedom from discomfort, freedom from a pain not known. Privilege is never having to think about what your next meal will be because you've never known real hunger, only peckishness. This is the kind of life Pearl knows. That isn't to say that I don't sympathize with her, quite the contrary. The film did an excellent job putting me in her headspace even as she committed increasingly disturbed acts. But as much as I feel for her and find the ending to be a tragic conclusion, I think it's only fitting. Her ambition made her uncaring and deeply self-absorbed. While Tony at the very least tries to make the best of her situation and be considerate towards her daughter, Pearl is lazy and immensely ungrateful for what she has and very quickly lashes out at people when they don't give her exactly what she wants. When you look at Pearl outside of her own perspective, it's painfully evident what an unlikable person she is.
Truth is, I'm not really a good person.
She's one of those characters who's incredibly engaging to watch, but as a person, has almost no positive attributes. And that's why, for me, the most uncomfortable part about watching Pearl was realizing how much I had related to her, and not in spite of her negative traits, but precisely because of them. Throughout the film, Pearl expresses little to no concern for the feelings of other people. She is entirely preoccupied with her own dreams and views others as tools to achieve what she wants. It's a really dark reflection of what artistic ambition can do to a person, and it's one that rang uncomfortably close to home for me. In my worst moments, I think I am like Pearl, minus the murder and childish outbursts, of course. I am intently focused on my own desires, and I worry that my tendency to self-isolate has dampened my ability to empathize with and truly care for other people. So Pearl is almost this cautionary tale for me, a reminder to never forget that all of this, all of what I'm doing, is meant to connect to other people. I think that's where Pearl ultimately fails. She wants to become a dancer not because she thinks she has something to share with the world, but because she thinks that's the only way to be given the life that she thinks she's owed. There's this one really incisive line from Pearl's companion film, X, that I think really reflects the themes of the movie.
I will not accept a life I do not deserve.
On one hand, it's this very confident and kind of admirable declaration of self-respect, but on the other hand, it's a deeply selfish remark that places your own self-interest above everyone else's. It's a statement that speaks volumes about Maxine, the girl who said it, as well as Pearl, whose life parallels Maxine's in many ways. That little mantra implies a very karmic view of the world, where everyone is owed exactly the life they deserve, and with enough grit, determination, and stick-to-itiveness, anyone can improve their lot in life and get something better. But that's an incredibly romantic view of the universe. In actuality, sometimes people are given responsibilities they never asked for, and the best thing they can do is just deal with it, because it'd be selfish not to. Did Tony deserve a life of single parenthood? Does anyone deserve a bad life, or a good one for that matter? An unfortunate reality of the world we live in is that some people just have to suffer, either due to the lopsided nature of capitalism or the uncontrollable circumstances of their birth. And it's nice to think that the world is just in some cosmic way, and that everyone who is suffering right now is suffering because that is what they deserve. But the truth of the matter is that people do not always get what they deserve. The world is inherently unjust, and there is no great meaning to success nor failure 90% of the time. That's such a difficult reality to contend with, though, especially when you are in a place of privilege, like myself. You start to ask yourself all these deep existential questions like, why have I been granted the luxury of a good life? Why are those people suffering and not me? How dare I complain? How dare I wish for more excess on top of excess? How dare I? How could I be so selfish and cruel as to want more? I think it's only human to want more out of life, even when you have the basic necessities and then some. Having a good life does not preclude you from complaining or from being ambitious. But what Pearl, and to a lesser extent X and Monsterland, do is show what happens when an ambitious desire for something more turns into an almost sociopathic solipsism. All we can do is ride the line of selfishness and cruelty and hope we seldom tip over the edge.